views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most inspired visionaries on the planet in lighthearted, lively dialogue. Join us as we explore the expansive nature of reality in a down-to-earth way, offering you insights and tools, empowering you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Now, here's your host, Christine Upchurch.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm talking to you today on KKNW 1150 AM here in the Seattle area. You might be listening on WBLQ 1230 AM in Rhode Island, Connecticut, or New York. You might be listening on one of the 35 stations in Australia, anywhere around the world on Transformation Talk Radio, or after the fact on ChristineUpchurch.com. But wherever and whenever you're listening from, you're going to be really glad you joined us here today, because we're going to be talking about something we've never talked about before, and I just about can guarantee it pertains to you. And we're going to be talking about family issues. But before I get into that and tell you who our wonderful guest is today, I want to say hello to my better half here in the studio, Mr. Benny Mathers. Benny, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm doing well, thank you.
Fluster, you okay now? We breathe?
I know. It's like the changing of the guard sometimes here, going from one live show to the other can be a little crazy.
There's some frantic moments. I think we need a little more time at the top of the hour, but we still make,
that'd be nice.
Make it do.
That'd be nice. Although I don't think we want to hear any more news at the top of the hour, because it's just tragic what's going on. It's not that I want to bury my head in the sand. In fact, I think that it's really important that we are aware and that we consciously work to shift things. And in fact, I did my first Facebook Live video as a part of a global event recently.
I saw that. You looked adorable.
Oh, thank you. It is funny. Trying to get the camera angle right, and like get everything set up. It was a little tricky, but it's had hundreds of views already. It's there.
Hundreds of views.
It's there for the watching. It includes my perspective about how we're being asked not only to clear out our own emotional stuff, but to help clear out what I call the collective shadow, and clear and sort of increase the energy of the collective heart. It's a matter of opening the collective heart so that we can energize the manifestation of a more peaceful and loving world. And it includes a meditation. So go to the homepage of my website, ChristineUpchurch.com. You can click on that and listen to it after the fact. And if you're interested in sort of coming together with others, you don't need to do it live. In terms of consciousness and intent, time is not relevant. So please join us, if you will.
And go after the hate with love.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Go after it.
And we have to somehow come to this place of setting boundaries, of course. The boundaries are really important. But we can't do that with hate. It's just, it keeps the cycle going.
It's too messy.
Yeah, it is.
Messy.
And
we're not all about that here.
No, we're not. And,
No.
And speaking of taking things from messy to more workable, yay! I'm really excited to have our guest on today. He's been a guest before, and I tell you, this man writes so many books, and they're wonderful books, and I don't know how he does it. And we're talking about Eric Maisel, Ph.D. He's a retired family therapist. He's currently a life coach. And he's the author of more than 50 books. And his latest book is called Overcoming Your Difficult Family. Now, he's been quoted or featured in a variety of publications, many of which you've heard of, including Martha Stewart Living, Redbook, Glamour, Men's Health, the San Francisco Chronicle, and Self Magazine. He lives down in San Francisco, and, I'm really excited to talk to him today because the title, Overcoming Your Difficult Family, is one that's going to capture all of our attention, but the subtitle is even better, 8 Skills for Thriving in Any Family Situation. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Dr. Eric Maisel. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. The world is quite odd, isn't it?
It is. It is. What's your take on it?
Oh, my word. I think none of it is for public consumption.
oh, yeah. Oh, this is FCC controlled, so please don't swear on the air.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
We're just also dark inside right at this moment. I feel for that Congresswoman and her remarks, but at any rate, nothing much for public consumption.
Uh-huh. So which Congresswoman's remarks are you talking
about?
I
can't repeat what she did and then deleted.
Oh.
Is it ringing a bell?
No, I don't think I follow this stuff pretty closely these days, which is sort of surprising because once upon a time I really felt like it was in my best interest to kind of separate myself from the news. And the past few months, it's felt really important to me to be following this.
Well, I think I'm going to skip even talking about her because repeating what she said is actually dangerous in its own right. So
okay.
Maybe off the air we can chat. But the world is what it is right at this moment.
Yeah, it's a violent place. So, gosh, you're a psychotherapist. You've got great perspective on ways in which we have wounds within, as individuals. What's our collective woundedness about, do you think?
It's so difficult to say, isn't it? I've always been a fan of Camus and other existentialists, and you may or may not remember the very end of his novel, The Plague, which is an allegory about World War II, and he substitutes rats for Nazis. And the novel ends with a line that goes something like, "The rats always return for the edification of mankind."
Oh.
And I was reading these books when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, Sartre's Les Mots, and I've always believed that the rats return for the edification of mankind. That is, that this keeps coming back. What's here now keeps coming back, and that it's a substantial portion of the human race.
Wow.
In the 1950s, you will remember that a book came out called The Authoritarian Personality by Adorno.
I'm not familiar with that book.
It was a great book, and it was an attempt by certain Berkeley professors to understand what World War II was about, and not so much where Hitler came from, but where his followers came from, what was going on in their being. And they identified many interesting attributes of the authoritarian follower. And that all got squashed in the late 50s, I think, from right-wing pushback. I think the right wing in this country, didn't want to know how the right wing in the rest of the world operates. But that's still awfully fascinating material about the kind of pseudo-religiosity of the followers and the this and the that. Still remains some of the most interesting reading. The idea of the authoritarian personality, the idea of the authoritarian follower.
Right.
I think they're quite relevant ideas.
I follow Amy Siskind on Facebook, and she's been making a list every week of ways in which we're no longer living in our norm and actually heading towards authoritarianism. And it is fascinating and it's terrifying. And I think that her lists are actually ending up in the Library of Congress. They're very impressive, and they're huge sometimes, like 100 and plus 150 items in a week.
And in mentioning Camus, I just want to mention to listeners that he had some great essays, one of which was called Letter to a German Friend. And this was a long letter in which he remarked how French and other European progressives were slow to react to Hitler because they just couldn't believe that people like Hitler actually existed. They knew intellectually that such people must exist. They were beginning to understand, other kinds of authoritarian leaders, Stalin and what have you.
Right.
But at some level, they could hardly believe that they existed. And then at some point, they believed it. And then they, in Camus' way of putting it, then they reacted strongly and appropriately, and they could not any longer be fooled by that fascism.
Right.
We may be at some place like that where, progressives have to actually believe what we're seeing. And I probably don't agree with you a little bit in your intro, or agree is not the right way to say it precisely, but I'm not sure we can change things by thinking about them or praying on them. I'm not sure we can change things at a distance.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree. And what I was saying in my video is that there's a piece of it that we're not allowing ourselves to feel the grief associated with the collective, and that's a really important part of it in order to sort of free up the energy towards manifestation, which includes not only the vision and the heart energy, but the action too.
Yes. And I've been asked in different contexts about, is it good to watch the news? Is it bad to watch the news? Mm-hmm. I'm going to give a kind of long-winded answer, but it may be sort of on point. I believe in the idea of life purpose choices, that there isn't one singular purpose to life, but that we have to make our life purpose choices. And if we don't, we actually don't know what's important in life, and we aren't actually living our life purpose choices. Well, let's say that one of our life purpose, they might sound like creativity and relationships and activism and service. But let's say that one is activism, and that one's life purpose choice around activism is up right now. This is a moment where one feels one's activist persona needs to come to the forefront. That's different from listening to the news.
Right.
I think that people are being, really disturbed and pestered and maybe unnecessarily involved in the daily news. Seems to be really harming people to spend those 2 or 3 hours at the end of the day hearing stuff. Mm-hmm. If you want to be an activist, be an activist. But I think they're very different things. Listening to the news and being an activist, to me, seem to be very different things. And the one I think, the first is debilitating and the other is absolutely heroic and necessary.
So how does a person be an activist with information?
Without information?
How do you not watch the news but have the information necessary in order to direct your activism in the way that makes sense?
Well, I think it depends what sort of activist you mean to be. If you are one of many and mean to be in a march, then presumably you're part of some organization. You're in some particular news thread where you know that the march is coming and you march. Because I've been working with creative performing artists the last 30 years, I believe in a sort of creative activism where the thing you might be doing is like an Orwell or Camus or like other writers we could name, maybe using your linguistic skills to be identifying some particular thing to be writing about. Mm-hmm. If you're an investigative journalist, then you know you're working on some particular story. It's the idea of, for me, it's the idea of focusing on one isn't really an activist unless you're focusing on something to be an activist about. Right. For me, at this moment, it's mental health reform. I hate what's going on with kids and the overdiagnosis of kids.
Oh, my gosh.
My eye is peeled there. Mm-hmm. I'm the editor for Parent Resources at a big website called Mad in America. So I think we have to pick our activist threads. There, we have to be informed.
Yes.
But that's different from knowing about every person who now has said something about something.
Yes,
it doesn't feel
absolutely.
like the same thing to me.
Right. But I think that we also can't keep our heads in the sand about everything. So it's if we were going to have some sort of, political activism in our life, then we need to be informed in that particular area, or else, I fear that the same sort of thing that happened in leading up to World War II could happen again.
Yeah, and for me, sometimes I think of them as meaning containers. We need to create a container for all of this energy and passion and darkness and what have you. And I was just noticing the other day, I was following some bit of news, and somebody was on a show who had created a very elaborate, I think, 400 or 500 item timeline of the Russia thing, different. Well, the activity of creating that timeline is an activist activity. That serves everyone to be able to know that A follows B and B follows C, or vice versa. Right. So that to me is how excellent activism works. You pick a thing to work on, and you really throw yourself in there, and then you're of help.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. We've got to go to a quick break now, but when we return, we will get to the topic of family. More with Dr. Eric Maisel here in just a few moments.
Chris Stanis is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
What is a brilliant culture? And how do we create them? Why are they important? Claudette Rowley has created a breakthrough 5-step process to help you design a culture that is authentic, innovative, and successful. Learn how to create change with Cultural Brilliance Radio, the DNA of organizational excellence, and Claudette Rowley. To learn more or work with Claudette, visit ClaudetteRowley.com.
The goal for the Art of Powerful Living Radio is to inspire every human to live lives that are rich, fulfilling, on purpose, and fun. This hit show with Robert Schoenfeld is a fresh approach to boldly living our lives with creativity, courage, patience, wisdom, love, and power. Join Robert every month with Dr. Pat Basotti for the Art of Powerful Living Radio.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. For centuries, spiritual traditions have talked about how humans have an energy field, or aura, surrounding them. Although skeptical scientists refuted this for decades, science is now beginning to catch up with spirituality. Scientists can actually measure light emanating from living beings, so they can measure the human aura, which in scientific terms is known as the biofield. Many medical practitioners around the world use an instrument to evaluate a patient's biofield for the purpose of diagnosing illness. They understand that imbalanced or insufficient light in a person's energy field indicates a physical or emotional problem. The good news? There are ways to balance and increase your light, resulting in greater well-being. For more information, please check out stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
You laid your footprints here along the timeless sea. We have not been.
Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW, WBLQ, and Transformation Talk Radio. I just love Michael Tomlinson. Thank you for playing that. Yeah, shout out to Michael Tomlinson. He is a musician here in the Seattle area. He's been on the show before, and he's just got such heart, such insight, such wisdom, and he's a great musician, too.
I like it, too.
Yeah, thank you. We are talking today to Dr. Eric Maisel, and Eric, you and I were talking about sort of the state of the world and the upheaval, and I know that that's like the macrocosm, and the microcosm more relates to our individual lives and our families. Your latest book, a gazillion books you've written, I'm so impressed with all the books you've written, is Overcoming Your Difficult Family, 8 Skills for Thriving in Any Family Situation. So let's just first start at the high level. Why do we tend to have such issues with our family even after we grow up?
Lots of ways to think about it. One is the idea of original personality, which psychology doesn't discuss. I have a very simple model of personality as being made up of 3 parts. Original personality, which are the endowments we come into the world with. And anybody who's had kittens or puppies or kids knows that every creature comes into the world itself. And then there's formed personality, the person we become over time. And then what I call available personality, namely our remaining freedom to be the person we would like to be. Well, as I say, psychology thinks nothing about original personality. It sort of acts like everybody comes into the world the same.
Really?
And then develops or undevelops. Yeah.
Oh, that's strange.
Which is odd because everybody knows that isn't true. But what that means is not only you, but your siblings, your parents, everybody in your family, every human being is already somebody to begin with and may well stay that somebody forever. And that person may be a little sadder, a little more anxious, a little more tyrannical, a little more sensitive, a little more this, a little more that. So one of the reasons this family dynamics turns out to be so difficult is that everybody is themselves. They're not for each other. There was a phrase in family therapy a while back called the pseudo-mutual family. That is, a family that looked like all family members were on each other's side, but nobody really was. And that seems to me to be a truer model than the 1,000-year romantic troubadour love model of we all love each other in this family. That doesn't seem to me to be the true model, we all love each other in this family, but rather everybody has their agenda, their original personality, their resentments over small things and big things, surprisingly over small things. Sibling wars are amazing. I've done maybe 30 or 40 interviews in support of this book, and every first or second host wants to talk about their own sibling ruptures and sibling difficulties. That looks to be one of the sort of unexplored areas of family life, how hard a time siblings have with each other. So I think there are lots of different ways to think about this, but the main point is that it is true that family dynamics are difficult and that families are difficult places to live in. And I think that the simplest sort of statistical way of looking at it is if, which is the case, half of marriages end in divorce and 3/4 of second and third marriages end in divorce, and many other marriages ought to end in divorce where folks are staying together for the kids or for financial reasons or for social reasons. If you just do that math, it looks like 3 out of 4 families, at the center of those families are couples that are not liking each other, are not okay. So how can anybody in the family be okay if the main partnership is not okay?
So are there situations where the main partnership is good and yet there's still dysfunction in the family?
Sure. And sometimes I think of those as kind of a subversive unit in the good sense, like a little resistance cell, that couple that really is good together having to deal with his parents and her parents and her siblings and his siblings. So lots of other things can be going on, even if that main relationship is going well. And right now, there are a lot of interesting and difficult dynamics among siblings around taking care of the aging parent.
There's
a lot of that going on.
Absolutely.
And then there's the one sibling who's the sort of the selfless one, or the one who gets dumped upon, or however that role gets adopted, who ends up having to take care of aging mom or aging dad, and the other siblings want no part of that. And then there's all of the inheritance questions and so many things going on that often lead to real ruptures where, siblings never talk to each other again.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen that firsthand, and it's funny because I saw my brothers. I don't see them very often, particularly as a pair. I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and we were commenting on how well we did as a threesome, dealing with our 2 parents' deaths that happened 16 days apart from each other, and then sort of dealing with all the estate stuff. It was really easy, and it was just like you see all these terrible things that are happening in other families over it, and somehow it worked well, and I felt very, very blessed.
That's right. Your story is the exceptional story. Most stories don't turn out that well, or really the siblings aren't just not as okay as the 3 of you sound to be.
Yeah. So I know you've got lots of tools you can offer us about how we can sort of develop skills to deal with the difficult situations. What are some of those?
In the book I present 8, and the headline here is, I don't expect any human being to learn 8 skills. It goes way beyond what we can do. But I do think that if one or another of these skills speak to a reader or a listener, then that's the one to work on. The 8, I'll just name them quickly in case we're coming up on a break, but the 8 are smart, just being smart about problem solving, strength, calmness, clarity, awareness, courage, which is a big one, presence, and then resilience, because these are family matters. The issues are going to keep coming back and keep coming back. So we need resilience to deal with them time and time again.
Right. So, if we do a lot of our own inner work, clearing out some of our own issues that sometimes, often will, relate to family stuff, and we end up getting back into a situation where we're dealing with our family and we get triggered, what does that mean?
Well, it may mean in part that we haven't done the work you just said.
Right.
A lot of people do workshops, read self-help books and what have you, but don't actually take away an anxiety management tool that actually works for them in the moment, a portable tool, or don't really learn how to communicate strongly. Just give you one headline. I train clients when there's something important that they want to say, and often in families there's something important you want to say. I train them to speak in sentences of 7 words or fewer with a real period at the end.
Oh, I like that.
And it's very hard for human beings to do that. We put in commas. We want to start half apologizing and taking the sting out of what we're saying and doing all kinds of things at the end of a sentence. And communication fails when we do that, because we're letting the other person off the hook, but also the other person isn't hearing us once we start putting in those commas. So here's an example of that kind of sentence. That's not okay.
Love that.
With a period. It's very hard for human beings to say that's not okay with a period. We feel like we've done something somehow dramatic and treasonous and just very big by saying that's not okay with a period. But when we do that, we really open up a space in the other person to hear, and it's very hard for the other person not to respond. Whether they respond positively or negatively, you will be heard. One of the reasons we don't like to speak like that is that we know there will be consequences.
Right.
And we're often just not ready we don't want those consequences. The consequences may be as large as divorce, but there can be all kinds of smaller consequences, all kinds of ruptures, all kinds of bad evenings, all kinds of everything.
Right.
And so we repetitively avoid the confrontation or the clear speaking, but we can't really we can't stand up for ourselves, we can't feel good, we can't make progress if we're not going to say what we need to say.
Right. This is fascinating, and I know we all need this. We have to go to another quick break, but stay tuned for more.
The way the leaves come down from autumn trees, you are in these golden parts of me, flowing wild and free.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. What does the word healing mean? Many think that healing merely means eliminating symptoms. However, based on my many years as a healer, I have a much broader perspective on the word. Healing can manifest in a variety of ways, including having physical problems resolved, becoming more emotionally centered, experiencing better relationships, gaining greater clarity, and feeling more spiritually connected. True healing always includes some level of transformation. Whatever form healing takes, there is one commonality, an improvement in quality of life. To me, the highest form of healing goes beyond aligning with wellness. It comes from recognizing our soul's voice and allowing it to speak through us. And in that sense, don't we all yearn to heal into our wholeness? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
Hi there, my name is Audrey Michelle, host of Rewired Life Radio and a spiritual growth coach. I talk about this all the time on my show, listening to your body and acting on intuition. What do these things even mean? Here's the thing. About 10 years ago, I figured out I was doing it all wrong. I mean, I wasn't unhappy, but was I really happy? And then life sent me a spiritual smackdown, like it does, because I wasn't listening to my best resource, my body and my intuition. I was living from a place of fear. I was stressed and I was in pain, and I seemed to be happily unhappy. Mostly I just didn't know what I didn't know. And what I didn't know was that my body and my intuition had all the tools I needed to live life as my best self. I'm sharing the tools I have learned over the last 10 years of my healing journey in my online class, Soul Awakening, beginning September 19th. Learn more. Go to audreymichelle.com/awaken. That's Audrey Michelle, spelled MICHEL.com/awaken.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
Have you been seeing numbers like 111 and 222 everywhere you go? Do you feel that the universe may be trying to get your attention, perhaps offering a message of some sort? As it turns out, numerical patterns and certain types of geometry form the very fabric of our reality, from cells under a microscope to the astronomy of our night sky. At Stellar Reflections, we offer special sessions which tap into these patterns, designed specifically to support you on your journey. The 111 and 222 activations are sessions activating new patterns in your energy field, which in turn can help you create new patterns in your life.
Outside in the wind, I feel everything. I'm breathing again, full of you. Then love starts to rise.
Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW, WBLQ, and Transformation Talk Radio. And again, that's Michael Tomlinson. You know, he's got some great music. I'm having a conversation today with Dr. Eric Maisel. The subject is the subject of his latest book, Overcoming Your Difficult Family, 8 Skills for Thriving in Any Family Situation. Okay, Eric, during this time right now when dealing with our families, what's one of the more important skills that we need to develop?
It is the skill of calmness. But before I go there, I wanted to give a headline about why this book, which I failed to mention. And that is, if people are aware, and they may well be, that we're in this middle of this epidemic of individual pathology diagnoses. That is, everybody, adult or child, is getting labeled with something or other, whether it's clinical depression or ADHD or PTSD, or in kids, ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in that model, context and circumstance don't count at all. It's as if you've caught something. You show certain symptoms, and you get a certain label. And so we're really deeply embedded in this moment of so-called individual pathology. And so I wanted to do this book as a little bit of counterpoint or antidote to that way of thinking about things. How can it be that context and circumstance don't matter?
Right.
How can it be that if a child every day has to experience his parents screaming, that might not make him something or other, sad, anxious? So he's going to get the label. He's going to get the childhood depression label, and what's going on in his family is not going to be looked at all. And that just strikes me as completely wrong. And anybody who thinks about it for a second must understand that the distress doesn't reside just in that child. The distress is there because of what's going on around the child.
Right.
So that's a reason.
Let's take it another step further. I'm real curious about your perspective on the use of drugs for some of these things, such as ADHD.
I'm completely against it personally, and I don't think they're drugs. I think they're chemicals with powerful effects, and that's a very different concept. If you have a rhino raging and charging at you, we have tranquilizer darts that can put it down. But that doesn't mean we know anything about why it's raging. So we have chemicals that can do things to you, that can alter your mood, that can alter your brain chemistry. We have those chemicals. That doesn't mean that we have any idea what's going on inside of you.
Right.
And that's how these chemicals operate. An awful lot of the effect of these chemicals is the placebo effect. There have been big studies around how between 50 and 75% of the, quote, positive effects of these chemicals are the placebo effect. But here's another just fascinating piece of this. This is sort of a secondary placebo effect. So there have been nice studies where kids are put in so-called clinical trials and given so-called medication for their ADHD, but in fact They're just sugar pills.
Sure.
It's just placebos.
Right.
But the fact that they have been given something, now the parents and teachers, administrators don't know that these are sugar pills.
Uh-huh.
The fact that they've been given something doesn't change the child's behavior because he's taking nothing, but it completely changes the parents' and the teacher's perception of the child.
Wow.
Now the child seems ever so much better.
Yeah.
So this is a placebo effect once removed.
Right.
So, you're bringing up a big subject which is important to me, but I do not believe that these are medications because for them to be medications, that implies that there's an actual illness. And there is no illness being detected anywhere by any test in the mental health world.
Yeah.
The head of the National Institute of Mental Health said a couple of years ago, and he said it and no one heard him, that there's no such thing as depression or schizophrenia.
Oh, wow.
And by that he meant the phenomena is true. Some people are despairing, but to add on a pseudo-medical sounding label like depression does nothing to move the conversation forward.
Right.
Yes, people hear voices, but to throw on the label schizophrenia makes it sound like we know something. Makes it sound like, oh, here's this identifiable illness called schizophrenia. There's no such thing. There is no identifiable illness. We don't know why a person is hearing voices. And I have a lot to say about that, which we can't quite go to right at the second. But the main point is, if there is no illness, it can't be medication. It can only be a chemical with a powerful effect. I have to put a big parenthesis here, which is you may want that effect. If you are deep in despair and suicidal, you may want the window of opportunity that one of these chemicals can give you to, so to speak, take a breather and to have your brain chemistry reorganized so that you don't commit suicide. So I'm not saying never take a chemical with a powerful effect. Just understand what you're doing, if you can. Understand what you're doing and understand that it's not medication for an illness, but a chemical with an effect.
I also think about the children, too, and it's like we've got our society structured so that, first of all, children have very little spare time. Secondly, they're expected to sit and listen and watch, for a good portion of their day. And it seems like it doesn't allow children to be children, the kinesthetic, the curious, the creative people that we're designed to be, particularly at that age and stage. And so it's like we're trying to get kids to conform to a model that should be conforming to them instead.
Don't you think that if we let kids out on a farm for a summer and let them run around all day and only show up for a sandwich completely dirty, that they would be 100% happy and healthy?
Absolutely.
I mean, it just seems so logical.
Right, and they learn things. See, my first child, we homeschooled until he took some classes outside the home, but we homeschooled him until 10th grade, 11th grade. And he was just one of these creative types, and he was a bit of an introvert. And, he had friends and stuff, but he needed that alone time. He needed that imagination time. And I shudder to think what would have happened had he been in like a regular school.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, he would have had, an ADHD label or something else by this time. And by the way, there's no reason why you should know this or your listeners should know this, but Congress, which can't pass anything, passed a horrible bill a little while ago. Time flies. I was going to say a couple of months ago, but it may be as many as 6 months ago. Allocating lots of money in the billions for primary care physicians to learn how to prophylactically predict which children are going to have mental disorders.
And predict, and then are they also supposed to prophylactically treat?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes. So since everybody's parents nowadays are going to have some label, clinical depression or what have you, primary care physicians are going to be able to look at those labels and say, well, since dad is clinically depressed and since mom has generalized anxiety disorder, this child is at risk, let's put him on something now.
Okay. That's terrifying. Terrifying. Yeah.
It's just terrifying. But the money's now been allocated, and the drug companies are now, hard at work providing information, so-called information, false news, so-called information to primary care physicians and, of course, psychiatrists about how to go down this road of, so to speak, predicting mental illness and medicating before there are symptoms.
So what are the ramifications of essentially suppressing some of the symptoms associated with, what's going on inside of a person?
Well, we're not fully alive if we're in some zombie state produced by medication. Mm-hmm. And as I say, I work primarily with creative and performing artists, many of whom are on antidepressants and other psychiatric medication and hate it. Oh, yeah, because that's the paradigm. Depending on which office you walk into, if you walk into an MD's office or a psychiatrist's office, by the way, parenthetically, the amount of time a psychiatrist spends with a new patient is down to 15 minutes.
That's horrible.
What can that be about except I say I'm depressed, you agree I'm depressed, and you start the prescription. That's all that can go on in those few minutes. It's a certain kind of transaction. So whether you're a writer or a farmer or anybody, if you walk into that office and you say I'm depressed, which is the language you're going to use because that's the language of common parlance, you're not going to say I'm despairing. Nobody says that.
Sure.
You're not going to say I'm sad. You're going to say I'm depressed. The practitioner across from you is going to say you're depressed. And, he has to get 2 or 3 other symptoms from you, which he'll get, sleeplessness or loss of appetite or loss of interest in your usual pursuits or what have you. All of those things are going to be true because you're depressed, because you're despairing. So all of the symptom picture is going to be there. It's just going to take nothing. And, a clerk at a pharmacy could do the same checklist, just a checklist.
Right.
Because there are no tests to run, nothing going on except a checklist. So at the end of those 15 minutes, you will get that medication, and you're going to be in this battle with yourself thereafter between, I think it's having some kind of positive effect, but I can't create. Completely knocked out my creative genes by virtue of whatever this chemical is doing.
Right.
So, that's one piece of the answer. And I want to put a parenthesis here just for someone who's listening and says to herself, wow, I should get off this. Don't just get off it like snapping your fingers.
Yeah.
These are very dangerous chemicals to get off too quickly. So if you decide to get off these chemicals, please do some research as to the best ways of getting off them. And I think coming to the website that I mentioned before, where I'm an editor, madinamerica.com, which is Robert Whitaker's website. He's written Anatomy of an Epidemic and Mad in America and other good books. That's the place to go if you want to learn how to get off these so-called medications.
Okay, great. And this segment, we talked a lot about, what's not working and not dealing with our issues. When we return, Eric, I'm going to want you to share about some more strategies for dealing with some of our family issues and dynamics. More with Dr. Eric Maisel here in just a few moments.
Long distant thunder, I see a flashing light in the night. You show me that
Calling all moms, it's time to awaken your vibrant, intuitive, loving self in every area of your life. Join host Debbie Pokornik as she shares thoughts, stories, and tools to help you stand in your power. Listen to Vibrant, Powerful Moms, helping everyday women create extraordinary lives. Mondays at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. For more information about Debbie, visit empoweringenergy.com. That's empowering with letters NRG.com.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. As a former research statistician, my scientific background is what many would call sensible. For more than a decade now, I have been working in the field of energy medicine, facilitating sessions and teaching around the world. People from the mainstream often ask me, how did a sensible woman like you end up working in such an alternative field? Implicit in their question is the underlying assumption that the field of subtle energy, such as energy healing and intuition, isn't sensible. But I believe it is very sensible. Even scientists are able to measure aspects of this. Approaching life from an energetic perspective brings us new opportunity for healing and transformation. And from a practical standpoint, even if you can't rationally explain how something works, if you experience a shift from it, then doesn't it make it pretty sensible? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
Wow. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. This is Talk Radio to Thrive By. I'm telling you, I got to pinch myself some days because when each of us gets called to do something that we so not thought was in our wheelhouse to do for a purpose that's so much greater than us, we get to show up and shine.
If you would like to show up and shine on the Dr. Pat Show as a co-host or sponsor, send us an email to inspire@thedrpatshow.com.
Is traditional medicine not working for you? Do you still feel as if your health isn't 100%? Here at the Holistic Medical Center, Dr. Nushin Darvish and the qualified staff look through the dimensions of wellness and start a healing plan prioritized to your needs. Our physicians assess the whole you until complete health is achieved. Get the help you need by visiting drdarvish.com or call 425-451-0404.
Hi, this is Laura Richer, host of On the Verge Radio. Sometimes you hear encouraging messages like transform your life now, become empowered, create the life you crave, and it all seems overwhelming and you're not sure where to start. I'm here to tell you that self-improvement is not always fun and easy, but it is always worth it. The path to creating positive changes begins with releasing the things that have been holding you back. Then you can create a life that inspires you. I know this because I've done it. You can find out more about what I do by visiting my website, seattlehealinghypnosis.com. I look forward to supporting you on your journey.
In the dance of life, no matter what you dream or what you leave behind.
Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show. You know, this is a fascinating conversation, and this hour is flying by. Eric, you know, we've got a lot of stress in our lives, and there are always issues. I think there are almost always issues within the context of family. So how do we develop strategies for dealing with our own stress and then kind of navigating the difficulties within the confines of the family?
Well, for dealing with our own stress or anxiety, whichever to call it, we want to acquire some anxiety management strategies that actually work for us, which means we're going to have to practice them. I believe in simple things, though. As I say, I don't think people can really do complicated strategies. We're just too busy rushing around to deal with that. So one of the skills I teach in the book is the skill of calmness. And one of the strategies I have there is the simple one of acquiring a snow globe, which maybe you still have from childhood, and shaking it. And as the snow settles, just feeling yourself settle. That is patiently carving out a little time to do that kind of exercise where you're using the snow globe for a kind of visual reminder of what you're attempting to do in your being.
I like that.
There are lots of strategies like that. We were talking off air about visualization. One visualization I like with respect to calmness is visualizing a switch somewhere inside of you where, when you flip it, you just become a calmer person. And what you're really doing when you flip that switch is you're saying something to yourself. You're saying, no more dramas, no more histrionics, no more this, no more that. I don't want to create my own anxiety and stress. Let me just get rid of all of that and demand of myself, decide to be calmer.
Right.
So flipping that switch is a certain kind of simple visualization that a person can do at any time. Another kind of tactic is just deep breathing. 5 seconds on the inhale, 5 seconds on the exhale. Been known for thousands of years that reduces stress.
Right.
And then all kinds of cognitive solutions where you don't say things to yourself that increase your anxiety level. You learn to only, this is a very high bar place, but you learn to only say things, think thoughts that serve you.
That's a tough one. That's a really tough one.
It's a tough one, but again, most people aren't even trying to get close to that high bar idea. And then just the last one, just to mention, and that's the idea of marrying a useful thought, a good cognition, with a deep breath, allowing for both of those things to serve you, dropping a thought into a breath. I call those things incantations, but they're really affirmations in a breath. And so if you can find some little phrase, 3 or 4, it has to be a short phrase because it has to fit in a breath, something like, I feel supported, or I'm perfectly fine, or just some set of words that are short enough to drop into a breath, and then just do a little deep breathing and speak those words to yourself. These are simple things to try, and I think we shouldn't scorn simple tactics, because if we're just rushing through the day, never trying anything that really helps us, well, then we're probably not going to help ourselves.
Right, right. And I, even in terms of healing, I've always viewed that the simpler approach, the better. So, go ahead.
If I can just piggyback on what I just said, because I think it's important, and it can go in one ear and out the other, but thinking thoughts that serve us is different from caring about whether a thought is true or false. It's a very big point. There are lots of true thoughts that we don't have to countenance, that don't serve us to think. I'll give you an example from my creative performing coaching life. You know, if you're a writer and you go into a bookstore and you look around and you inadvertently say to yourself, wow, there are a lot of writers out there. That's a true thought.
Right.
But it may not be a thought that serves you. And what often happens is you have that thought on a Monday, and Thursday you stop writing because of all the competition and all the writers out there, but you don't even know what happened. So that's why we have to be very, very wise and smart about hearing our own thoughts and noticing the dangerousness of a thought as innocent and truthful as, wow, there are a lot of writers out there.
Yeah.
And the two thoughts that my clients speak the most that they have to watch out for are, I'm too tired and I'm too busy. I'm too tired to get my work done. I'm too busy to get my work done.
Right.
Because there are so many grains of truth in those utterances, everybody is busy and most people are quite tired. Because there are so many grains of truth, we let ourselves off the hook.
Right.
So we have to get in the habit of inserting a big but, a big B-U-T there. And, you know, I am tired, but I could work on my novel for 20 minutes. Or I am busy, but I can squeeze in 15 minutes to do some painting.
You know,
so we have to do that work.
Yeah, and we're running out of time here. I'm just wondering if you could give us a quick example of somebody you've dealt with who has employed one of your strategies and have shifted the dynamics within the context of their family.
Sure, I'll give a quick example. And these dynamics are complicated. So I was working with a lawyer who ostensibly the issue was that he was a workaholic and never could leave work. And he was working 70, 80 weeks at his law firm. And he had good reasons, good reasons and bad reasons, good reasons trying to become partner and billable hours and all those things. Well, to make this long story short, he was staying at work so long because he was actually afraid to go home, because he was afraid to see the badness of his relationship with his wife.
Wow.
And I mentioned the 8 skills in passing really quickly. One of them is courage. And he actually had to work on finding the courage to go home each day. And that sounds so odd, and yet that was exactly what was going on in his being, was that not only would he stay at work late, but then he would go to the gym. Then he would do A. Then he would find every possible reason to make sure that he would get home after his wife was already asleep. So he never saw his kids for that reason.
Right. And
so, as I say, to make that long story short, he practiced courage. He started going home. They went into couples counseling, and things actually got better. This was not going to the place of, and they got a divorce. Things actually got better there once he showed up and started coming home.
Instead of avoiding the pain.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. In, say, a minute and a half or less, do you have a message for our listeners relating to, how they can show up within the context of their families to be healthier and happier?
Well, I have no particular overriding message, except, of course, that these are difficult dynamics. But I would say a few small things, or they're not really small, but specific things.
Okay.
One is safety is important. If what's going on, and I name different kinds of families, and if you're in a bullying family or one of these kinds of families where safety is an issue, your first job is to be safe and to try to find allies. And it may be that the other parent can't be the ally because they're in collusion. So it may be a grandparent, it may be an uncle, it may be a cousin, but you want to find somebody on your side who at least can say, yeah, you're not nuts. This is actually going on in your family. So that's one sort of thing to remember, is that safety matters. And the second thing is, if you want to have a conversation with a family member and you want to be heard, have it in a new location. Rather than just bumping into them again at the kitchen table and having your usual repetitious dialogue, invite them out for a walk around the lake or to tea or something. Just that ceremonial movement to a new place is going to make some amount of positive difference in the relationship.
Right. It's really good stuff, and you've got some great, useful tips within your book. Can you please share with our listeners what your website is, Eric?
It is myname.com, which is ericmaisel.com, EricMaisel.com.
Okay, that's EricMaisel.com. Eric, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for joining us here today. I'm so glad that you're listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
You've been listening to the Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey. Each week, this show engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information about the transformative healing work of Christine, visit www.stellarreflections.com. And for weekly topics, visit www.transformationtalkradio.com.